All right. Hello, folks. It's Monday. That means this week, at least, it's another the AI Chronicles stream with James Shore.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be back. So you were out at the conference, right? What was the name of the conference again?
It's the Kansas City Developer Conference. And this is the first time that I've been at that conference. In fact, it's actually the first time I've been at any conference other than maybe a small little get together back in November since the pandemic. And so I have to say it was a bit weird being amongst
getting back together and seeing people again,
seeing people and being in crowds and things like that. But it's a really well run conference, and they treat the speakers really well. They got nice T-shirts and other swag, and they have a whole. Originally, it was it's interesting because I see a lot of conferences, and I was talking with Billy Coronado, who's a Java guy, and actually he's one of the KCDC staff folks, and we were talking about there's not a lot of in the US, not a lot of Java heavy or Java specific or even sort of Java friendly conferences. And and Europe a whole lot. There's Devox and other conferences, JCon. There's a whole bunch of ones in Europe, but not a lot in the US. But the KCDC, which used to be a .NET conference, had a Java track, and that's where I did my talks.
Interesting. I wonder if that's because I've certainly noticed a difference between my customers in Europe and my customers in the US. And it does seem that the US seems to be more, I'm not going to say on the cutting edge, but on the shiny edge.
The fashionable edge, yes.
Yeah, the fashionable edge.
Yes.
And maybe that's because in the U.S. people have more control over their training budgets. It's pretty common in U.S. software-specific companies to say, "Here's your budget, spend it how you will." And so people are going after kind of the new shiny rather than necessarily what they're working on right now in their jobs. Because of course, Java and C# are still really common.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're dying languages at all. But it's interesting, comparing Java against Microsoft. KCDC used to be a Microsoft centric conference, and there's lots of conferences that I see that are .NET focused, and so it's a little frustrating for me as a Java guy that there's not a lot of outlets for just a good Java conference. Java 1 used to be the place to be, but that's kind of gotten too Oracleized, I guess is the way I'd look at it. And then it used to be in the San Francisco area, Moscone, which was great for me because I'm in San Francisco area. But then they moved it to Vegas, and it's I'm not gonna go to Vegas unless
it's kind of a helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's okay for conferences, but.
They've got a lot of space for conferences, but I would not choose to go to Vegas. I've been a few times to play, but it's not the tourist part of the city is not great.
Yeah, I will say Kansas City does have really good barbecue, so that was definitely a feature. Got to have a lot of barbecue.
Is famous, of course.
Yes, exactly.
I love barbecue. Whenever I'm going to a state or a city that's famous for barbecue, I'm definitely picking up barbecue because I live in the Northwest. I live in Portland, Oregon, and we have barbecue, but I don't know if it's great barbecue.
Yeah.
Although I do have a brisket place just a half mile from my house, and
that's pretty.
Luckily,
good.
It's not so close that I could easily walk there every day. Otherwise, I would be
that would be a problem.
A little rounder.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot rounder.
So it's interesting. So I did two talks, and lesson learned: don't do two new talks at a conference on the same day. Oh my God!
Oh, yeah, that sounds exhausting.
That was exhausting. Luckily, the second talk was basically refactoring basically refactoring your way to fix primitive obsession, create a new class. And so it's stuff I've done literally 100 times before. And somebody commented, it's like, yeah, that sounds very much like what you do on the stream. It's like, yeah, kind of pretty much. It's like, here, let me walk through all these steps. But it's interesting, like conferences have different audiences. And I think I aimed a bit too high in terms of like, look, this is an intro level stuff. This is like, you know the basics. Here's like the next step up. And I think it might have been a bit much for that audience. And it's always hard to tell.
It's really difficult to tell, and I find that often I can't make any assumptions about the audience. Like the audience is usually more junior, not junior, less experienced than I was expecting. Like some of the things I would think, well, this everybody knows.
Right.
Often, actually,
not so much.
No, not so much. Yeah. Hey, Suiji, good to see you.
Yeah, and so the first talk I did was on AssertJ, and it was really interesting researching that talk because, I mean, I've been using AssertJ. I was trying to figure out, when did I first start using AssertJ? Around 2010, 2011. So it's been quite a while, and it's grown a huge amount. So it used to be called Fest, and then it was forked, and then AssertJ became the main project. And lots of stuff was added. I contributed stuff, but it was funny. I actually opened up my fork of the project, and it's like, oh, you haven't updated your fork in 13 years. And I'm like, oh my god, really? Because that was the last time I contributed to the library.
That's the kind of thing you don't really want to see show up, because it's like just mortality staring you in the face.
Yeah, it's like, oh my god, has it been that long? But it was really interesting, like really looking with fresh eyes at some of the functionality that it has. It's like, oh, I've been like ignoring some of the stuff that's like, oh, that's way better than the way I've been doing it, kind of thing. And so I already have like 3 issues that I'm going to file and 3 PRs that I'm gonna do to fix those issues, as well as starting a new module. So in Java, there's 2 money classes that are sort of popular. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but at least known. One is based on what was going to become a standard, what they call the JSR. So it's the Java X money, although I don't know if that's still the same namespace. But I looked at that one. I remember looking back at it a few years ago. And it's just like, yes, if you have these needs, like you're coming from a really sophisticated financial application, then you need the Java X money. But for probably 90% of the cases, you don't need that level of complexity. And so Stephen Colburn, who created the Joda date stuff that eventually got pulled into Java, has Joda Money. And it's like, this is perfect. This is exactly the level of abstraction and all the stuff. But testing it, like there's no custom assertions. And so I was like, let me show as part of the presentation how you create custom assertions in AssertJ. Like, oh, let me create one for Joda Money. It's like, oh, maybe I'll create a little project and a little module. So that's probably a contribution that I'll be doing.
That actually, I think that's that experience you saw looking at Joda Money and looking at the other money class. You said that Joda Money, it sounded like you were basically saying it's really well designed. So what are the characteristics there? Like, what lessons can you pull out of the way that was designed that would be useful for folks to know?
So it's interesting. So I remember looking at it on stream when I was doing a project that was using some money stuff. And I'll have to go back to look. But one of the things I remember is the simple stuff simple? Like, I want to create an object that's USD of $10, whatever. How much do I have to know? How much of the API do I have to look through? How easy is it to create that thing? And in Joda Money, it's like a constructor.
Which is what I would expect, right? You pass in maybe a currency string, and you pass in some amount of money, and there you go, money.
And I just remember looking at the docs for the. So I think it's the JSR 45. I don't know if that's the right one. I'll have to go look it up. so the implementation is Moneta or something is the organization, and I just remember looking at it and just feeling like, where do I start? Right? It's that out of the box. What's the simplest thing I can do to get to what I want? And it just felt already too complicated. And it's that make the simplest things simple, make the hard things possible. I forget who said that, but that's sort of the way I think about it.
Yeah, it's a great saying. That's the first thing that came through my mind when you said make the simple things simple. Because every language has its culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not so much just the way the community tends to accrete around it. And when I think of Java culture, I do think of the Hammer Factory. Like that is just kind of the way the culture has developed, because it was very much an enterprise software development type of thing. .NET has a different kind of culture, similar-ish to Java, but different. JavaScript, of course, has a very different culture.
Yes.
Very much we're here to get shit done and get out.
Right.
And don't give me any of your stinking abstractions. And there's definitely not one is better than the other. I can appreciate the sort of advantages and disadvantages of all of them. I think the culture, one of the things you see in .NET is everything has an interface.
Yes,
like
yes.
Everything has an interface. Yeah. It's just really interesting to see that difference. And having worked quite substantially in Java and C# and JavaScript, I find myself coming to appreciate we're just here to get stuff done and get out approach. Because early on in my career, when I was doing the most of my Java, that was when I was like 5 to 10 years of experience, is when I was doing the majority of that. I really appreciated the ability to prevent people from making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you see in a lot of API design around Java.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't know if you recall, you probably do, but when Java first came out, there was articles like we studied the top 10 sources of bugs and we designed Java to not have those bugs.
Right.
And memory management, of course, was one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where the checked exceptions came from, which obviously didn't end up working.
Didn't quite work out the way it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've talked about this. I love checked exceptions as an idea.
Yeah. I just had to say it's funny because I came across this project. I've been looking into like authorization stuff as opposed to authentication. There's a bunch of new interesting things coming out. And anyway, there's this one project called Warrant, and I was looking at their Java SDK. It's like, oh, they throw a warrant exception and it's checked. And I'm like, crap. I'm like, oh, did you really have to do it that way? And I'm like tempted to like go in and file an issue saying, can you like implement this without checked exceptions? And so,
I'm sure somebody's already filed that exception because you're not the only one to have that reaction.
No, actually, I think it's, and I see this happen, like Java is not, for a lot of these things, it seems like Java is not a first-class citizen. It's sort of like equivalent with everybody, or maybe even second class with like these out-of-the-box SDKs. Now, you don't have to use the SDK. It's all HTTP JSON, so you could so you could write it yourself. It's not that hard. But it always feels like it wasn't quite written by someone who is up to date with sort of current Java thinking, like that. You don't really want to throw checked exceptions unless you absolutely have to.
This difference in styles, I was talking about how I've early on, I really liked the Java, let's prevent you from making a mistake. But you know what and then I got into JavaScript and there was none of that. Like none of that. And I was like, oh yeah, I can just do stuff with private variables if I want to. And then sometimes I wanted to. And it actually was really nice being able to do that. And what it reminds me of is something that we do in the tech community all the time, which is that we try to come up with technical solutions to social problems. Yep. And this question of making mistakes is not strictly a technical problem. It's like using an API incorrectly is also a social problem. And I don't have any sort of grand theory here, but what I have noticed working with both Java and JavaScript is that having JavaScript will guide you in the right direction. There's conventions, like if it's something's got an underscore, you know that's meant to be private,
right.
for example. But if you want to access it, go ahead. Nothing's going to stop you.
Right.
That convention drives you in the right direction, and then when you want to do more for whatever reason, you can. There isn't this, we know better than you, we're going to stop you from doing what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Which, in a large software environment, sometimes you have people who aren't behaving,
right,
and you want to stop them from doing what they aren't supposed to do.
Right.
But is that something that needs a technical solution, or is that something that needs a social solution?
Yeah.
So anyway, just something that came to mind as we were talking here.
Yeah, and I think what's one of the things that I've seen in the last, I'd probably say since Java 9, Java 10, like since Java went on this new cadence of a new release every 6 months, it really feels like they, and also some of the libraries, like Spring aside, because that's sort of a legacy framework.
And it's been around for a while.
Yeah, because it's been around for a while.
Stuck with its decision.
Yeah. That there is, but and maybe this is just my bias, but there is a push for simpler, clearer, not having the, less frameworky kind of implementations from things. With some of the books that came out and some of the it's like Modern Java and some other ones that sort of a bit of the back to basics, like what are we trying to do here, and sort of the Yagni and those kinds of things. And so to bring it all the way back to like the Joda Money, it's like that's it. It's clear that it hit that right. Like it does what you need it to do for the most part. It's easy to do. If you do need some of the more complex stuff, well, look, this library is not for you. Maybe it's a good way to start, but if you have more complex needs, like you're doing a trading system or something like that, well then, okay, then go find something else. And I think the ability to say this is not in scope, like is one of the magical things about that good product managers and good developers do, is like, look, I can do that and we can spend a lot of effort, but is that does that cover enough to be worth it, right? Is that return on investment of the complexity, and have we then made everything else worse is often the problem.
And this is exactly why wrapping your third-party libraries is so valuable, because whatever level of complexity they're at is not the level that you need. You either need something simpler, or you need something more complicated, or you need something simple today and more complicated later. But whatever it is, if you wrap it, you can provide that interface. For example, you were talking about warrants.
Right.
Of course, you're going to wrap that, and then it doesn't matter if it's a checked exception or not, because you can do what you want with your interface.
Yeah.
And then if it's not, you wrap Joda Money and your code, as always happens, eventually needs something more. Well, now you swap it out.
Yeah.
Nobody's the wiser.
And
you can refactor your code in a way you can't refactor third-party code.
Exactly. And it's interesting because this discussion, actually, a related discussion came up on my Discord around wrapping things. And it's, sometimes it can be interpreted as inheritance and implementation inheritance. And then there's another discussion going on, another Discord about this. And like implementation inheritance can be useful, but I think it's one of those really sharp things that like you have to be, not only do you have to be expert level, but you have to have, talking about culture and sort of, the stuff around you, they have to be kind of expert level as well, because it's so hard to do right, even if you follow some of the good guidelines that don't change existing behavior kind of thing. But when you wrap stuff inside, especially, I've been big on this for years now, of basically primitive obsession and things like that. And I include in primitive obsession is these domain-free types. Like money by itself is still a domain-free type. It's still in the sense of primitive because it has no domain-specific behavior. And so if you wrap that, just stuff it inside a thing, even if for nothing else you've given it a name, then not only do you get the benefits of better named and possibly growing abstractions, but then you do get that nice, oh, Joda Money doesn't serve our purpose anymore. And you don't have to do a whole scale replacement. You could say, for these kinds of domain types, now we need that other library. And maybe you could combine the two, and that's fine. Or maybe you slowly migrate. But then it's sort of under your control of how far and how fast to do that migration.
I think we've talked about this before, but primitive obsession is, I mean, if I was handed a magic wand and say, we're going to destroy every code smell except one, which one do you want to keep? And, after I get over that, well, we're talking about massive mind alteration. That's pretty unethical. After that, I would say we're keeping primitive obsession, because that one is so powerful.
Yeah.
And the thing is that it feels so awkward. Like, let's say your primitive is representing somebody's age. Right. And you're like, and you've got a number, you've got an int, and it's got an age in it. And you take this and you put it in a class or a record and say it's age, and it's just one field. And there's this just awkward sense of, oh God, what have I done here? Like, there's nothing here. And then later on, you realize, actually, I need to construct this with a birthday. And suddenly you construct it with a birthday instead of an age, and all the age stuff still works.
Yes.
But that first, couple of weeks or even sometimes months where it just feels like this thing isn't doing anything for me, it just feels awkward. And so I see people leaving primitives in their code way, way past their shelf dates.
Yeah.
Because, of course, once it's got its tendrils throughout your code, now it's hard to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And like primitives, like I give full talks on this, and it is primitive obsession. And then it's sort of along with what I think is the flip side of that same code smell feature envy, because once you pull it out, then you start seeing all the things that we're doing logic relating to that thing. It's like, oh, now there's a place to put it.
And it's all usually duplicated over and over.
Exactly.
Because it's just a line or two of code.
Yeah, it's just in one if statement.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah. And one of the nice things is some of the refactorings with that IntelliJ supports makes that really easy. And in fact, that doing that primitive obsession solution is one that I walk through that talk. And it's one of those, I don't know how many people sort of got it. And I basically said, look, I don't expect you to be able to now go home and follow all these steps, because there were some pretty tricky steps. In fact, I actually made some mistakes and got into a dead end and then had to back up. It's like, okay, hey, we're at a dead end. How do we get out of this?
Right.
But I wanted to say, but what I was hoping people got out of is like, you need to explore your tools and dive deeper into this, because here is what's possible. The entire 40 minutes of my walkthrough, not one manual code change, all completely automated refactorings. And we end up with now a very nice self-contained class. And it's like, this is possible. This is what you can do. And you don't have to, do any manual work. Not that is necessarily 100% free of bugs, but it's very likely that it's going to be working.
What's your take on Doda's question there? Is it more helpful to tell somebody to read Martin Fowler's book, or to give them a shortcut to a list of IntelliJ refactors?
So I don't know. This is one of those where I'm like, I take that book so much for granted that I'm like, you haven't read it yet? You gotta read this book. Because for me, it was life-changing. That book and then not the design patterns, but like the introduction to that idea of some of the concepts, those changed my life in terms of how I think about design. And I think the refactoring book, I think everyone just needs to read it, because everyone's doing it, but not always fully understanding what's in there. And so sometimes the only thing people see are the automated refactorings, and not like the other ones that you can't automate, or it's awkward to automate. So it's one of those both. Like, I think you need to know the refactorings and sort of the philosophy behind it, because one of the things that he says that I don't think people realize is like, it's a small, and I put this in my talk, it's like a small steps, right? A series of small behavior change, preserving transformations. And that idea of small very much is what Jeepaw Hill talks about in terms of many more much smaller steps, and shrinking down your steps into tiny, tiny little pieces where after each one you could stop, you could make a different decision. Usually it's easy to back up. And to me, that's the crux of what we do and making it better. Yeah, smaller, no smaller than that.
Yeah. For my answer to that question, should we have them read the refactoring book or hand them a list of shortcuts, is kind of neither, but let me explain why. So back in the 90s, when it was the bad old days of waterfall development, stage gate development, phase gate development, whatever you want to call it, where there was a lot of emphasis on big upfront design. There's something in that era that we have lost.
Yes.
And what you saw a lot of in that era is a lot of discussion and articles and books about what design is and how to design a large system. And 30 years later, today, I don't see the same sort of awareness of design. And maybe it's because we have such a flood of people coming in, maybe because there's boot camps, which are more about understanding how to fit all these systems together, but not so much how to do the design of a system. Right. Maybe just because the nature of the work we do is more about gluing things together than whatever it is. I don't hear people talking about, except for domain-driven design, which of course I keep next to my desk. Yep. It's a great book. And there's, of course, this whole movement around domain-driven design. But I just don't see the same attention to design that people used to have. And now that big design up front, that had its real flaws.
Yeah.
I think this pendulum has swung too far in the direction of get stuff out the door.
Yeah.
And not far enough in terms of think about how it all fits together. I'm not saying that has to be done up front because I'm not an upfront design person.
Right.
But there's definitely not enough awareness of design in the world. Martin Fowler's Refactoring, first edition, and the second edition is also excellent. I was a reviewer on the second edition, and it is fantastic. And has been modernized, as uses JavaScript for its examples instead of Java. Is the best book on design I have ever read.
Yeah.
Don't read it to learn about refactorings. Read it to learn about design. And if you've got somebody who says, what should I, don't tell somebody to read it. Don't hand them a list of refactorings. Show them how it applies to design and use the automated refactorings. Yeah. So it's both, but people aren't going to pick up design just by reading a book. You got to show them. So that's right. My answer.
Yeah. So 404 asks the first or second edition. I actually think if you're a Java developer, the first edition is probably going to be easier to read, even though it uses sort of a little bit outdated code. I think it's going to be easier to read. But I think I think you're absolutely right. So when I was talking about the books that changed my life, they changed my life in terms of thinking about and understanding design. The Gang of Four, not the specific patterns, but how you think about how most of the problems are solved in let's add a level of indirection, or let's take it away, or let's add it in this way or this way. But the refactoring, it's not just the mechanics, right? That's, in a sense, that's the part that can be automated. It's the what problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah.
What is basically what?
Sorry,
go ahead.
I was just responding. Why don't you finish your thought?
It's what is the problem you want to solve, and there are different ways to do it. And here's this way. And you're absolutely right. I tend not to say go read this book these days.
People won't do it.
Because people won't do it. The other thing is it's actually very hard to read these kinds of books on your own. You can do it, and I've done it. Although, I find it harder and harder these days for some reason. But this is why I run a book club. And I'm actually going to be restarting my book club in September, and we're going to pick our next book. So if you're interested, join my Discord. Reading it as a group, especially if it's the team, especially if you're doing it as a team, because you're going to want to go back and forth and say, hey, let's take this thing and apply it to this thing over here, or let's try this out. And so the reading and then the doing and combining that, and whatever book it is, assuming it's a similar type book, it's the reading together and discussing that's where, for me, it goes back to learning about design patterns back in the mid 90s, early 90s, and in a book club. And that's such a different, more powerful, more deeper way of learning it than just sort of flipping through pages.
Yeah. The brilliance of the refactoring book, and I think the second edition is actually better than the first edition in this regard, is that it's not just a catalog of here's how you can manipulate your code.
Right.
But each refactoring has a long, intensive discussion about what are the trade-offs between, because every refactoring, true refactoring is all reversible.
Yeah.
I can do it this way, or I can do it this way. And here's how I get from here to here, and here's how I get from here back to here. And so the book says, well, you could do it this way, or you could do it this way. Why would you want to do it this way versus this way, and under what circumstances?
Right.
And this is something that Martin Fowler is very good at, is he doesn't really take a stand saying this is the right way.
Right.
He says, this is a way, and here's the situations where you'd want to do this, and here's the situations where you'd want to do this. And the refactoring book is just filled with that. So I think you could get a very long way in that book by not reading the code examples at all.
Yep.
And just reading the prose that explains, here's what the refactoring is, and here's why you'd want it, and when you'd want it.
Yep.
And it's so powerful in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should we do some coding?
Yeah, let's do some coding. Maybe we'll do some refactoring along the way.
Maybe we'll do some refactoring. So I would love to do some coding, except it's been 2 weeks. Oh, I started my interim VP of engineering role, Ted.
Oh yeah, so what is CTO, VP of engineering? What does that mean? VP of engineering. Do you know?
I wish I could answer that question because I ought to know. But yeah. So at least in the organizations I'm in, and I have to be careful not to reveal too much because I've signed a very rigid contract saying what I can and cannot share. Yeah. And the list of what I can share is quite small. But in the organization I'm in, the CTO is over all the engineering work, the platform team, the business intelligence team, the IT team, like everything technology is under the CTO. And what's under the VP of engineering is the engineering teams.
Okay.
And actually in my org, it's split between a director who's handling like the platform teams and me who's handling the product teams. Now we've talked about the problems I see with platform teams. Yes. So it's not the good thing about this organization. It's really we're working together on all the teams, not really just I'm only doing the product teams. But what I'm actually doing, of course, the managers report to me, but really what I'm trying to do or going to be doing, it's been 1 week. Mostly I've been interviewing people, trying to understand the organization and getting a pretty good way of understanding what it's like there now. But really, I think my job is to increase the capability of the organization, is to create a situation where the engineers are able to do their best work and they're able to work with the product organization to deliver what is important to the product organization. Now, some people would say that the job of the VP of engineering is to make sure that you deliver what you say you will when you say what you will, but I don't agree with that. That's a very predictive mindset, not an adaptive mindset. Yeah. So I think my role is to increase the capability and capacity of the organization as guided by business strategy.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've got the code up on screen yet.
It is up on the screen now.
Yeah. So for the last week, I've been doing this VP engineering stuff. Like
You haven't been thinking at all about this, I'm sure, and I certainly haven't.
No, in fact, I've cleared the cache, right?
Yeah,
Like
right.
I remember nothing
Yeah.
about what we're doing here. So I do have a note here that I was supposed to figure out why our linter was failing when a class was referenced after it was used, which is perfectly fine in JavaScript.
Right.
I'm glad I wrote this card because I'd forgotten about that. So that still doesn't work. But other than that, where were we? What are we trying to do here?
I remember something about, I think the HttpClient nullable testable.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were working on, I'm just looking, we are currently working on sending. So, of course, the application we're building here, for those of you who are just joining us, is a role-playing game using OpenAI's engine, ChatGPT's engine, to have a conversational role-playing game.
Yeah.
One where we actually don't allow the user to inject prompts, but we are going to manage them for that.
Right.
But we are at the very, very beginning of this journey. And so what we're trying to do is just get a walking skeleton where we can send a prompt, send it just a random string from the front end to the back end, have that, send it to OpenAI, get a response, and get it back to the front end. We just want to see the communication working all the way end to end.
Right.
And once we have that working, we can start putting in some business logic around the game, or game logic rather than business logic in this case.
That's why I call it domain logic. That way it covers both
domain
bases.
Logic. Yeah, domain logic around the game.
Yeah.
And see that working. And we do have the back end. We do have the back end in place. And we have a basically placeholder front end, but what we don't have yet is the ability for what we type in the front end to go to the back end. And once we have that working, we'll have to have the way to have that come back to the front, the response to come back to the front end.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're working on right now.
Right. So that's the higher level goal. That's sort of the user story, as it were. Yeah.
And as I recall, I'm just trying to think out loud here. We had created an HTTP client to be our wrapper for JavaScript's fetch library. We had created a backend client to represent our communication with the backend.
Right.
And I guess we were still working on that. So maybe that's what we should look at is. So we do have it. So as I recall, actually, you know what we should do? Let's look at the past episodes. What did we do last time? We have the backend request tested and working. So yeah, we have our backend client sending messages to the backend.
I think we were going to work on getting information. So we send it to the backend. We don't currently get anything from the backend.
I think it's actually, that was a whole nother story.
Was it?
We send it to the backend, but I don't think that the backend API exists yet.
That's probably true because we haven't worked on the backend for a while.
Yeah. So I think that's what we're missing. We have the send requests and we have the parses. We have the parses responses still to do.
Right. So in order to parse response, we need to figure out what the API is going to look like. Otherwise, we don't know what to parse.
So I think you're right. Actually, I said that sending the responses back was another story, but I think it does make sense for us to finish implementing the backend client to do the parsing response. Yeah. So I think that's what's up next. Does that sound good?
That sounds good. And we'll find out if we headed off in the wrong direction.
What'd you say?
So we'll find out if if that's not the right direction to go. So that's okay.
You know, if we just run our test from the beginning, it would have told us that.
I was going to say, have we? Because I saw you bring up the serve, and it's like, oh, but have we run tests?
Yeah, we haven't run the test.
So I mean, so this is. I sometimes wonder, is this just a problem that you have when you're sort of working on a side project or something like that? And I really like leaving placeholder like tests to say, here's where to pick it up. Because you, like you said, it's like we've both cleared our caches, and so we have no context.
Because of course you were at the conference,
because
I was your core.
Yeah, I was completely like totally different mindset. And this is one of I think the hardest things, and it affects so many different domains, from teaching to writing documentation. It's like the beginner's mindset versus sort of the curse of knowledge. And so when you're trying to, when we finished up our last session, we had all the knowledge in our head. And so therefore anything we did or notes we took seemed obvious. But then you pick it up and it's like, now it's all new again. And one of the hardest things to do is to sort of put down information in a way that you'll be able to pick it up again when you've cleared everything out of your head.
I think it is more of a problem for side projects.
Yeah.
Because when I'm working in a company on a real thing, now maybe it's because the way I teach people to do planning is we focus on one thing at a time. So we pick up the thing, we do it until it's done, and then it's done. And there's like, we do some design work, we create tasks, like we've got this whole plan out on a board. And each task is maybe a couple of hours. So it just doesn't have the same challenge that we have here. And I've sort of emulated that in our README a little bit, but these weren't quite fine-grained enough, I think, for that.
Yeah. Again, it's sort of the curse of knowledge. When we wrote it and everything was, we were working week after week on it, that was just enough for us to move forward. But you take a break and push everything out. But I do sometimes wonder, like, do people who are working in a heavy pull request, slow pull request response environment, where it's like they get a pull request on something, it was like, I haven't worked in this area in a long time, and then that pushes out all the other stuff you're working on. You go back to the thing 2 days later, and it's like, where was I? And again, this is what I love about ensembles is that ensemble holds that memory. So even if you're gone for a week on vacation or 2 weeks, you come back and you quickly it's not. It's out of your head, but it's still in everybody else's head.
Well, and I think that's why those heavy pull request environments, feature branch pull request environments, tend to be really slow.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to get stuff done in that environment. It's not a very satisfying way to work because you're constantly being interrupted, you're either waiting for somebody to review your pull request or you're being interrupted to review somebody else's. It's not fun to be on either end of that process. And I've seen the same experience in a heavy pairing environment. It's really about the collective ownership that keeps everything in people's minds.
Yeah.
But also we want the fast feedback.
Yes.
Feedback loops. Kent Beck said this way back in
loops,
early 90s or mid and late 90s when he's talking about extreme programming. Feedback, simplicity, courage, and what was the fourth one? And I should know these. These were the 4 values of XP. Yeah. Simplicity, feedback, courage, and something, which I should know, but I don't. Extreme Programming Explained.
Yep.
Let's look it up.
My book's not as accessible as my copy's not accessible as yours.
Communication, simplicity, feedback, and courage.
Communication. Yeah.
Feedback is so important, and it's about those feedback loops, having the fast feedback loops. It's huge. Respect came in second edition, Suiji. So there was a 5th value that was brought up in the second edition of XP.
Yeah. Which I think is really important.
Okay. I think what we were doing is we were working on the backend client. We had written the code that said we are going to make the request to the backend. Of course, we're using nullables here, so we can test this and implement it before the backend exists. Yep. And now what we need to do is say what happens when how are we going to deal with the response that comes back?
Right.
So, and I'll bet you when we implement this, we're going to discover that we don't have the way to configure our HTTP client.
Yes.
So we'll need to do that.
Yes.
So first, like what we were talking about is Extreme Programming Explained by Kent Beck. You probably won't be able to find the first edition anymore. There is a second edition. They're really two completely different books, and I would suggest getting both. But if you want a modern take on it, I got another book recommendation for you. My book called The Art of Agile Development, which is in print, and you would be able to find. This is sort of a modern take on XP.
We were actually talking about that as one of the books for the book club, and I said, I think James covered that because you had your book club stuff. It's like, but hey, if it's if it's what the people want, it's what the people want. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Don't be squashing my vibe there.
I said, if we do that, I bet I know somebody who could get him on.
Yeah, I'd show up. Occasionally, don't want to stop the conversation. Oh, fantastic, Sweetie. So, should I just start writing a test here, Ted?
Yeah, let's figure out what we want.
We're going to need an HTTP client because, of course, this is our abstraction of the HTTP protocol.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to want to say that, and we're going to want to create it with a particular response.
Yes, so this is the configurable part that we want.
So we're going to say, when you're called at the endpoint, say, then you should return the response, blam, something. And it would help if I used a colon instead of a comma there. And I think this is complaining because of TypeScript. Yes. We do not allow any arguments.
Oh, yes, right.
Create null,
yep.
Which we'll deal with later.
Yep.
So what do we want? And really, say needs to return not an object. It needs to return, it needs to return a status. It needs to return some sort of headers. And it needs to return some sort of body.
Right.
Which will probably be some sort of JSON body.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
These red lines are making things a little hard to read, but
that's pretty readable.
Yeah.
So I think the status is probably going to be
200.
200, yeah.
Let me do something here.
Pull it out to a variable.
Yeah, that way we can see it without having to deal with all this nonsense. Headers.
I mean, at least the content type. Yeah. Can't think of any other headers that we care about at the moment.
No. I mean, what we're really doing here is we're designing our backend API.
Yes.
So what do we want the backend to return?
Right.
I think just a JSON blob. We can always make it more complicated in the future. And then the response, well, remember our current story is just type something here, see it show up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's not running right now. Oh, great. Now it's gone forever.
That's okay. I think we'll get it.
Yeah.
So do we want just the what we sent, or do we want also what OpenAI might what OpenAI gives us as well?
I think we only want what OpenAI gives us. Like, we know what we sent, so all we need to know is what the response to the prompt is, right?
So that's interesting because who holds on to that little bit of state of the sent message? Is that the front end, or does because one way to think about it is the front end holds on to that state and it puts it up there and then attaches the response to it. The other is, I remember nothing, you, the server, give me everything, and then I display it. And so those are two interesting choices, I think.
I think that's a really valid question. And I think, my favorite answer to these sorts of design questions is to say that's future me's problem. And I think we can do that in this case because this is really just a walking skeleton.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is not the real API that we're going to have.
Right.
This is just a placeholder to get things working end to end. So I think it doesn't really matter. Like as long as we can get some sort of response to show up.
Right.
So should we call that? It's a little confusing because this is also a response, but we could call it response, or we could say answer, say, and then answer.
Yeah, that's one of those like, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm fighting my perfectionist tendency to like, what is the perfect word here? We could spend 20 minutes just discussing that, but I'm going to.
I think that is sort of the failure mode of pairing. I think it happens more in pairing because you don't have this time limit that you have in the ensemble.
Yes, that's very true. I've mostly experienced this in pairing, and especially if you're with someone who also has those tendencies. I've been known to spend half an hour discussing names. Yeah. Applesauce.
So anyway, yeah, applesauce. So let's see. Let's call this backend answer.
Yeah.
So there we've set up our HTTP client. Then we will make the request by calling backendClient.say something.
Mm-hmm. So we need the backend client. You didn't create the backend client yet.
Oh, I guess we will need a backend client, won't we? Backend client equals.
Yeah, XY or XYZZY.
Yeah, we'll have to. That's a good one. We have a backend client constructor. We'll say something. We don't actually care what we say.
I think we need an async on the test itself.
We do. You're right.
Hey, I actually learned something.
I'm going to go ahead and inline this response now.
Yeah, I think we can do that.
So we don't have two variables named response. And then we can assert that response is a string called backend answer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's saying that when the backend client gets this HTTP response,
is it the response though? Wouldn't it be response? Oh yes, right.
No, that's what our
yeah. Again, it's like which level is which one? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. We're setting up the next level down,
right?
But we're asserting
at
this level.
Yeah. It was the response that threw me with the name of the variable. So I wonder if maybe that's
actually this could be just answer.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah, that would be better.
So I'm going to check this in, I think. That's obviously not working. Getting TBD back instead of backend answer.
TBD?
Because that's what we hard-coded.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm going to say that we have test backend client dot say response parsing.
Mm-hmm.
And yet. So I think what we need to do next is get this HTTP client stuff working.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, let me just comment this all out. So if we come back to our HTTP client tests, now we need to implement the configurable endpoints.
Right.
So we've got a normal instance, got the null instance, doesn't make HTTP requests. I'm thinking that we need a bunch of tests here. We need to say that it returns default unimplemented response.
Mm-hmm.
It allows responses to be configured.
Mm-hmm.
We could do it allows multiple responses to be configured, but right now we don't really need that.
We don't need it, so I think let's punt until we figure out what we need there.
Yeah. Do you want to do one of these, or do you want me to do one of these, or should we just take our first break?
Let's do one of these and then we'll take a break.
Okay. Do you want to? I assume we'll start with this one.
Yeah.
You want to implement this, or do you want me to?
Let me give it a shot. So I assume we'll need async here.
Yep.
And so let's see. So we're going to do. I'm going to start with the assert. So assert equal. So we're going to want whatever the response is.
Right, which will be coming back from our request async call.
Yeah. So we do const response.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to be await request async. Yeah.
That's our abstraction over the HTTP client. Yep.
Oops. And then, oops. And that. And so here it's going to be client, HTTP client, create null. Now, how do we want to configure our response?
Well, this is the default, so we're not going to configure our response.
Oh, right. That's right. So that's our default. And so
I think that's it, actually.
So response. So what is the response request async? What does request async return?
Me.
Yeah, no worries.
Request async does return some stuff already. We can see that receives HTTP response. It returns status headers and body.
Okay. So then what we'll want.
That's what he told me 404. He said he was sick of Java.
Yeah.
He's embraced TypeScript.
Java's dead. I'm all in on TypeScript.
Yeah, JavaScript really. Like too much. There's too many types.
Too many types, yeah.
Heard it here first, yes.
Do we care about the other stuff, like the headers and the status, or do we only care about what the body is? I assume it's a fully default, so we want to check all of them?
Yeah, we want the status, headers, and body.
Okay.
Because this is what's going to show up when somebody hasn't configured it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So let's go and grab that.
Oop, you went too far.
It's sped up.
There you go.
So that's that. And then this.
Well, that's a great idea, Tramstars. We decided you're going to do PHP.
Oh, good Lord, no. How dare you?
The company I'm at has been around quite a while, and they have quite a bit of PHP code still.
PHP, like modern PHP, is actually pretty nice. I mean, it's actually, you look at PHP and it looks like recent PHP. It looks a lot like Java, and a lot of the same things apply.
Yeah. Well, I mean, PHP and JSP were kind of around the same time. Wasn't PHP first, or was it JSP who were?
I think first? PHP was first.
Yeah, but it was brilliant at the time. Like this idea, we're going to just create web pages that have code embedded in them. It was a smart idea.
Do we want the body to say my response body or is this where we say literally not implemented?
Yeah, I think what we want to say is this is the default nulled response, or even default nulled HTTP response. I'd probably put underscores in there just for the ease of troubleshooting in the future.
Tell me more. How do underscores help?
If this shows up in a stack trace or in some output,
then it's like,
and
why
it
is
doesn't
this
have
here?
the underscores, it's not as obvious that this is
Got it.
programmatic.
That's a great idea. I hadn't thought of it that way.
And for the same reason, I'd want the status to be either 501 or 503. I don't remember which is which. Good call, deep equal.
Let's see. I think
Can I do a quick search?
Yeah, go ahead.
501, not implemented. Yeah, I think this is 501.
Yeah. I love that site.
I do too. Oh, that was so good. Oh, sorry. I'm distracted by cats. It is the internet. Of course I'm distracted by cats.
Yes, of course.
And then for the headers, I think we should put in a header for the exact same reason. If somebody gets this response, something's gone wrong, essentially. And so we want it to be clear if they're looking at the headers to see. So I'd have something like default nulled HTTP headers as that, or default nulled header name and default nulled header value or something like that. Yeah, Luigi, exactly. Obviously not prose. Obviously not a real response.
Right. Yeah.
Then I don't think we need the other ones.
Right, because those are only from the real thing.
Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff that I'd be very surprised if our code is going to be looking at those headers. Yeah. So if it does want them, it can configure them.
All right, and does it fail for the right reason?
That is a good question.
I'll let you scroll.
It's funny. I'm not having the issues that you're having with scrolling. I'm on a trackpad though, so
I'm on a trackpad too. But I think the latency plus your scroll is probably a little faster. And I don't get quite the feedback. So
yeah, that's interesting. So we expected 501.
We got a 503. We got a null header. That's interesting.
Yeah, so maybe we've already configured this and we just never tested it. Or maybe we did test it and I just didn't remember. Nope.
No?
I think we must have just put in a default.
Yeah, we probably put in a default, although it's interesting that we chose 503 for...
I probably just misremembered what 503 was and we were just like putting in a placeholder. Yeah. You okay with me making this pass?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So it's down here in our stubbed fetch. There's our 503. There's our header. So let me actually. Oh, you know what? There is an error in this test because the way the request async is implemented.
Okay.
There we go. So our status is matching up. Our headers need to match up. So we're going to have default nulled header name.
So Keysor mentions that we should probably return a content length. I think that makes sense.
Technically, yes. But the reality of it is that it's kind of a hassle to have that content length header in there. Like if you're looking at the headers, you don't want to have to deal with the content length header.
Yeah, and
So
since we're not
in-
actually going to use it for parsing, I guess if we ever needed it for parsing, then we'd probably add it. So I could go either way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, doing early on, I didn't do this fake it once you make it pattern, which is where we only use the nulled version. I would talk to the real server, and I was constantly writing my test to delete out the date and the
we've done
content
that.
length, because I wanted to do a comparison on the headers, and they would always be noise. Right. So not providing them is helpful. So Species asks, where's the content type coming from? And that is a good question.
Wait, are we not returning that? Yeah, we're not returning that. So we must have been adding that. Were we adding that?
Well, we're just making a response.
So does response?
I think response is adding it.
Response.
Let me add the body and see what happens.
Isn't the body this string here?
Oh yeah, that's it. Default nulled HTTP response. Okay. The yellow highlights, by the way, are just doing a simple string comparison. That's why some things are yellow even when they're the same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's one of the things that if I were to open source this, somebody would probably submit and I would happily take, but couldn't be bothered to implement a proper string differ on my own, or object differ. So yeah, what this does is it converts the JSON to a string and it looks line by line. Are these lines the same? Yes or no? It works surprisingly well.
But you're not using the block move, which would have detected that. Never mind. Sorry, way back in the early 90s, I implemented a code differencer for Visual Basic. And I have been appalled at the level of code differencers that I encounter because, like, I wrote it so that it understood Visual Basic. Visual Basic had the habit of reordering code blocks because you never really saw the whole thing. And I wrote it in such a way. And I'm always like surprised when I see like Java differs. It's like, oh, you added a curly brace to this other method, and then you added a part of a method except for a last curly brace. Like, no, I added this method. You're doing a stupid line by line comparison. Can you not be smarter? And I'm surprised that it's still that way. Terrible.
Yeah, Microsoft Basic was actually a pretty cool language. That was my first job, was programming not Visual Basic, but the predecessor to Visual Basic, which was Microsoft. What did you say?
Quick Basic?
Pro Basic, yeah.
Yeah.
This was Microsoft's professional development system Basic, which was Quick Basic plus a linker and compiler and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it was Quick Basic. And it had a proper IDE back then, which was really quite unheard of.
Yeah.
With a great debugger and watching and stuff like that, and instant and immediate mode. Anyway, so yeah, that I think would compile everything to P code, so you had access to the syntax tree in a way that modern differs just.
Well, what's frustrating is like IntelliJ clearly has parsed your code in a very deep way, but the diffing is pure text. I'm like, and it's really interesting because IntelliJ has a feature with the Git log to show you what refactorings were done. And it wasn't recording the refactors that you just did it. It back figured out, oh, you must have done a rename. And so like it does all this smart stuff.
Cool. That's really impressive.
It is really impressive. I actually came across it fairly recently. I'd forgotten about it for a while and came across it again. It's like, oh, actually, yeah, that's pretty interesting. But like you look at the code differencer and it falls back to like, 1970s.
Yeah. So Kesor is asking about the content length and content type. I think this comes back to fundamentally what we're doing with this embedded stub is we're making a stub.
Right.
It is the responsibility of the person who's configuring it to configure it the way they need it to be configured. It's not a fake. It's not trying to emulate real behavior. It's just doing just barely enough to make the code work.
Right.
And the reason for that is that, one, you do too much, and actually that kind of gets in your way in the tests. And second, it's way too much work. Like, it's so much easier to program it this way. And most of the time, you don't need the fancy fake behavior.
Right.
And when you do, you can program that in.
Right.
So we do need to. So I think what's happening is response is being smart, and it's saying that this is text, so I'm going to return text. And what I'm thinking, Ted, is that we should just specify that that's what happens, so that the content type comes back as text plain.
Yeah.
I think we could go to all kinds of effort to not have that.
Don't forget the char set.
Yeah. We could go to all kinds of pain and effort to remove that content type, but I don't think it's worth it.
No. Hey. Cool.
All right. So next, what we need to do is allows response to be configured. Should we take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break and we'll come back and implement that.
Okay. Do you want to write this next test, or do you want me to do it?
Let's see. So what is the next test? Allows responses to be configured. So
yes,
I think I can write that. It's mostly going to depend on.
Let me write one more.
Sure.
Placeholder. I want to just do this in one test, but we need to be able to say by endpoint. Go ahead.
Right.
I'll let you type that in, but.
So. And so it's pretty much going to be. So now, what do we want that to look like? Is the question.
Sorry, what?
So what do we want our configuration for the null to be? Okay.
I think something like this, or maybe my endpoint, and then the response. Okay. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so is the response is probably all, again, that full set of status, headers, body?
Yeah, I think so.
So in this case, let's do status. So we want something other than 501.
I think 200 would be okay, but we could really do anything. We could do 888, 999, 777.
Let's do 201. So our headers. And let's say our content type is application JSON.
Actually, I've looked into the standard. Application JSON does not have a char set.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I always thought it did, and then I looked into the standard, and it's defined as not having a char set. It's
I guess it
defined by standard as always being UTF-8.
Oh, good for it.
Yeah.
And here we want. Do we want?
So I think we should not be so real here. I think we should just do something like my header.
Okay.
My value. I think that's going to expose an issue, which is another reason I want to do it.
Okay.
But let's try that.
And then we need the body.
You'll need a comma too.
Yeah. I forgot what level we were at. Body. Something like that?
Yeah, that looks good to me.
Yeah. I think that's it. It would help if we search something, yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to.
So let's assert.
I don't want to be overly formal here or anything.
Deep equal. And so what we're, so if we do the request async, Where do we? So if we do, I guess what I'm losing is where would we specify the endpoint that we're actually requesting?
That I don't remember exactly, but it's going to be URL.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, though. We've been saying just the endpoint, but really it's going to be a full URL, isn't it?
Right.
Right, because this HTTP client is host agnostic. Is host agnostic.
Yeah.
It's just
making a request to wherever we say.
Yeah. So I guess we could do it like this.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't really matter what we put there because it's just going to be string matching anyway. But
so would we not need to specify this also in the request?
Oh, we sure will. Yeah, that's the URL parameter.
Yeah. So I'm going to put it before.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Okay. That's what I was like, I know we're saying what we're configuring, and I was like, where do we actually specify that we're hitting that? So now that question is answered.
You know what we should do to make this more clear? I got it. Let me pull this out. And the configuration from the request.
Okay.
So we're configuring the client, then we're making a request on it. And then the next test, we'll use the same client over and over again on our requests.
So our deep equal is going to be pretty much this.
Yeah, should be exactly that, in fact.
Response, and then that. Now, are we going to get that other? Well, I guess we'll find out. So this
we'll
won't
get the default response.
Yeah. So this won't even compile.
But we're not compiling actually.
Right.
We're not type checking it.
Yeah.
So it will run and it'll give us the default.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't have the type checker running right now. So it's just the IDE that's doing it. So the compiler, of course, is the speedy web compiler that skips the type checking.
Right.
Okay, you want me to implement this?
Sure.
So I think there's two parts to this. First, get it to work. Second, get the types to work. So
actually, the zero step is get IntelliJ to be happy, and then get it.
Well, that's getting IntelliJ to happy is getting the types to work. I actually want to do that second.
Okay.
So yeah, let me come up here. So we're going to need a new create null that takes. We're going to need not a new create null, but a create null that takes a responses. And then stubbed fetch. Oh, stubbed fetch is just a function. Okay, I'm gonna have to sneak up on this. I'm gonna skip this test for now. Things are passing. I'm gonna convert stubbed fetch from being a function to being, I think, a class. Like that. Let me see if I can sneak up on this. So what we need to do is fetch is implemented on the global object.
Right.
So what we need to do is we need to pass in not the fetch function because that function is not configurable. but something that can be used to get the function, which is the global object.
Okay.
So we're going to need to make a stubbed globals class, which is going to have on it a fetch method, which for now is just going to return stubbed fetch.
Ah, okay.
That should still work because I'm not using it.
Right.
Now, if I did that right, I should be able to say, instead of passing in stubbed fetch here, I can say new globals.
Mm-hmm.
And here I can say...
Is that stub globals?
And here I can just say, is it global? Window? Not sure. And the constructor is going to get global.
Right. And it's no longer a type of fetch.
Yet. And then this dot fetch is going to equal global dot fetch. Did I do that right? I have no idea. Did it right? Did I really do that right? I'm not sure if I trust it.
That's I was thinking the same thing. And it's like with
I did it right.
Okay.
There we go. It works. Yeah. Could somebody in the chat double check that global is valid inside of the browser as well as in Node? Because that's our biggest risk here, is that what we're doing is not really the browser environment.
Right.
I know global is, I think it's legal in modern browsers, but I'm not sure. It may be a window that we're looking for. But window is not defined in these tests.
Right.
So fingers crossed. Okay, anyway, we've got our global.
Browser does not have global, Keysore says. It has window.
Are you 100% sure about that, Keysore? Because I believe...
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I believe the standard has changed in the last several years. That's a glossary thing. Okay, thanks, Keysore. So we need window. Okay, well, that's going to make things a little more tricky here. Let me go ahead and put this back, get our test passing. Need to make this window, which means that we need to bring in the global JS DOM in our tests. Oh, it did not like that.
So can't you do like global or window?
Well, I can, but I want the test to make the production code work, if that makes sense. I thought that, like, I want to write real production code, not fake production code.
Yeah.
So I thought that bringing in the global JS DOM would do the trick. I thought it would have a window object. But either I've done that wrong or I misunderstood how that works.
So Keysore mentions that there's a this that is the correct one.
There's a globalThis. Okay, so what we could do then is we could say this here, but I think this in this context,
in this context,
be the
it's not going to be the right
HTTP
one, yeah.
But we should have globalThis. Linter doesn't like that, but Linter can suck it. Let's just turn off the linter for a second. Okay, so globalThis works. The linter doesn't like it, but it does pass.
Wait, seriously, globalThis worked?
Yep.
That's so bizarre.
What'd you say?
That's really strange.
But the problem is that the linter is not aware of it, so we need to tell it. But I don't remember how to tell the linter.
Well, it said can you say readable? Because that's what one of the suggestions. I don't know what that means though.
I think, yeah, it was complaining that it was getting an object. So I think it was complaining about the whole thing. But let me try read only.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't like it. Okay, should I pull up the ESLint config?
Sure.
Those yaks. Yeah, yaks. Yeah, you sound so excited. Oh no, that's how to do it.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. Yes, this just got more bananas.
Yeah. Yes, it did. So that's actually good. And then this will be global.
Mm-hmm.
And then here I can say this dot globals equals the globals.
Mm-hmm.
And wherever we're using fetch, which is here, this dot globals.
Dot fetch. Mm-hmm.
And the reason to do all of that was that so now when we create the stubbed globals, we can pass in our configured responses. And so I can put a constructor in here that has private read-only responses. And now we can re-enable the test. See it fail. Yep, just got the one test failing.
Yep, and it fails for the right reason.
That right there.
Yep.
Fails for the right reason.
Wait, one was skipped?
This dot responses.
Which one is skipped?
What'd you say?
One of them is skipped. Which one?
This one, because it has no body.
Oh, okay.
Actually, let me disable this one again, because I want to do a little bit more refactoring first. Mm-hmm. Namely, I want to inline this.
Manual inline?
Yeah. I tried to do it the proper way, but it didn't let me, so we'll just do it the hard way. Yeah, this is something that I see with the JavaScript refactorings pretty frequently. Is I try to inline something, it will say cannot inline complex function expression, and I don't know why. Sometimes it's when you have multiple exit points, but I'm not really sure. This one doesn't have multiple exit points, so I really don't know what the issue is. Anyway, we got this inlined now.
Right.
So now I should be able to come back here, enable the test, got the responses. So now I should be able to say responses.status. Oh, no, wait. This has got to be for a specific URL, right? We're fetching based URL and fetch options. So
do we want a failing test to force us to specify that, or do we think this is the test that should do it?
This is definitely the same test.
Okay.
Most of what we're doing here is refactorings. This is the only point at which I'm actually implementing this is right now, putting in that URL. And then the response is going to be this dot responses. You reference it based on the URL or default to the default response.
Okay. No.
That's ugly. We're going to want to refactor
Yeah.
that, but
headers.entries.
we'll make sure that this also defaults. So what we're doing now is we're saying if there is no responses, this dot responses at all, then it will return null.
Right.
And if it's null, then it will return this.
Right.
So the whole thing is just sort of a chain of defaults.
Right.
Not sure if that's the actual issue here. No, but it was definitely a bug. Okay, let's see what's going on here.
So I remember we had to do something with headers before, but I'm not sure why we would be doing that now.
Let's see what we're getting from our response. So response is 201 headers. So our it's working perfectly. Like we're getting the right response. So where are we failing? Fetch response.headers.entries is not a function.
Right. So here we were returning it. I remember we did this, and maybe,
oh no, this is.
I don't remember what this does.
I mean, this is just.
Are our headers not compatible?
Yeah, our headers are not compatible.
Yeah. Yeah, so what Sweetie mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. Fetch response.headers is
an actual headers object. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to be compatible with that.
Right. Right. Okay. We're doing this wrong here. Let's do it. Let me refactor a little bit more. Get things back to working. Take out the logs. Get this, take out this. Okay. Make a default response is equal to status 501 headers this.
Right.
And a body of this. And then we'll go default response body and default response dot headers. So what had happened is we weren't creating a response object.
We were just returning our object, our configured response, which was not a response object. Got it.
Yeah, yeah. So now what we need to do is make a configured response equals this dot responses URL or default to the default response.
Right.
And here, we'll make this a configured response. Configured response. And I'm not going to change the status. We should see it work for everything except for the status.
And the headers. Because it's going to throw in the content type.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's
but we had a bunch of other things fail as well.
So I think we broke... what did we break? Cannot read properties of undefined. Yeah, so the null cascade, is that... Do we need that still for line 82 there? If responses itself is null?
We do. That's the issue. That was it. Okay, our status isn't working.
So let's fix that.
And then I think what's going to happen is our header still won't work.
Because of the extra one. Yep.
Yeah. But everything else is working.
Right.
So for now, I'm going to go ahead and put in that content type.
All right.
And something is, it's now taking way too long. It's because of this. There we go. See the difference in there? 1.25 seconds to 0.07 seconds.
What the heck?
Yeah. That's nasty. Okay. I'm going to check this in.
I was going to say, this seems like a opportune time to do a commit.
HttpClient.create null allows responses to be configured. But I think we got to do something about this header, this extraneous header that we've got, because that's going to cause us so much confusion down the road. We're not specifying the content type header, and yet it's still applying it. What happens if we do overwrite it? What happens there?
Well, it does what I would have expected.
Yep, same. So I want to do a little spike here. I want to say, well, first let's look, can we is there a way to edit the response once we have it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we can delete. I think we've done that in the past.
Yeah, so let's try doing that. Let's just see what happens. Response.headers.delete
content type. Right.
Boom. That is the behavior we want. There is a slight problem with the solution, which I'm sure you've considered already.
What if we actually want it, you mean?
Yeah, it allows content type to be specified. You want to implement this test, or you want me to do it?
I think I can do that.
For it.
So you want trying to think if there's a
actually
more
think it's
direct
pretty
way.
much the exact same test.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is like, is it pretty much the same content?
Yeah. The only reason I'm not putting in the same test is because it is a slight variance. Like I think it's an interesting enough difference in behavior that it's worth calling out as a separate test. But it's basically the same test, just with slightly different headers.
So let's put in our content type in. So I expect this now to still pass.
Well, yes, because you haven't changed the assertion yet.
Right. No, what I want, and that's where I want to verify, like it dropped our content type, but we don't want to do that. So let's go ahead.
Hold on one second. Let's do this and to be configured.
Okay. Right. So now it fails because it's totally different. So let's, oops.
Yeah, Sweetie, you and me are thinking along the same lines here.
So this should still fail, and the headers should be empty.
Yep.
And they are. So how are we gonna?
That should be pretty easy, unless you want to implement this too.
I wasn't sure. It didn't seem so easy to me. So what were you thinking? Oh, okay. If it has that header. Sure.
There we go. I'm going to do a little bit of editing here, which is that we really only care about the headers.
Yes. That's what I was thinking when you were saying it's like exactly the same. It's like, but we don't care about this other stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There we go.
So I just want to see this fail in the same way. So,
sure.
Yep. Okay, great. Should we do a commit?
I'm just thinking. Yeah, let's do a commit. Oops.
How about respects configured content type?
Yeah.
Header. Yep.
Yeah, so that's what I was sort of, when I was pausing Sweetie, that's what I was thinking. Think what we want to do next is say, I'm going to switch and write this test and let you implement it, Ted.
All right.
If that's all right with you.
Yeah.
Say something along the lines of, it we already have it, allows responses to be partially configured. So if we create a client with an endpoint, but nothing specified, then I would expect the response to be same default response. You with me on that? I mean, you agree with that idea?
I agree. I wonder if it's more clear if we also assert against a different URL. Because what we're saying here, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're saying that if I configure a specific endpoint, I'm basically just saying here it's whatever the defaults are.
How about it provides default values for unconfigured, partially configured endpoints?
Well, is this partially configured?
It's partially configured in that the part that is configured is null, is the null set. But I just didn't want to write multiple tests saying, put in status for one and the endpoint for the other, and the headers for the other.
Because this is basically the same if we don't specify an endpoint at all.
It's not actually the same. Like, I'm not sure if this will work. Let me show you what's going on here. What we're saying is the default response is such and such. And here we're saying the configured response is whatever's configured if that endpoint exists.
Yeah.
Or it's the default response.
Right.
Because the endpoint exists, we're saying the configured response is empty object. So that's why it's failing, because now it's trying to dereference status.
I guess what I was getting at is I understand why it failed. It seems a little unclear from the test what the implication of that is.
How about this? Allows endpoints to be specified without every response.
Yeah, sort of Suiji's is where I was heading. Is like if we configure two, one with a status, one with an actual configuration and one with not. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I don't think it's terribly important. I'm just trying to think of.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. It's just going to make the test longer.
Yeah.
And it's not going to.
It's not going to push us to code anything different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to result in anything different. So
that's fine.
I'd be happy to do that if it was important to you. It's just going to double the size of our test.
Yeah, no, it's not terribly important.
Okay. Do you want to implement this, or do you want me to?
Are you going to get fancy with the optional chaining, or is there something, or are you just gonna,
I have a little bit of a fancy thing to do.
Then go do the fancy thing.
Do the fancy thing. All right.
Because I could do it the dumb way, but if there's a smarter way. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that. Well, I might have extracted constant. I don't know if IntelliJ supports that. I don't know if it supports that for JavaScript.
It would probably work. I just don't always think of it until I'm in it.
Yep.
So then it's easier to just type what I'm thinking. So that should work.
Mm-hmm.
I expected that to work. So where it's failing is here. And it's failing saying that it can't read properties of undefined. So it's saying headers is undefined.
Oh, because headers is undefined in the configured response.
Yeah. So I think we'll just make that an optional chaining thing.
There it goes.
So now I should be able to pull this out, just making it an empty object by default. And then I can get rid of all of this. And I think that's that.
So this is one of those interesting things around syntax and like how much expectation do we expect the reader to have, like how idiomatic is sort of this kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting one because this is a more advanced syntax. It's a fairly recent syntax. Not everybody's going to be familiar with it.
Right.
And you can code this without doing that.
Of course.
We could say if this dot responses is equal to undefined,
right,
or this dot responses
of URL is undefined.
Of URL is undefined. We have to have both there.
Right.
Then this dot response, or then configured responses equals empty.
Right. Spelling configured response is correct.
Well, yeah. But this is such nicer syntax.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
It's one of those like perennial questions of what is idiomatic and what is that's really strange, rare kind of thing. Like I'm fine with it because either way it's like the double question mark is pretty clear. It's this question mark that that
one's a little bit weird. The question mark dot especially because
the dot is also weird. Yeah,
you do it this way, but then you put in the dot when you don't normally put in a dot.
Right.
This is not legal.
Right.
But this is legal.
Yeah,
that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I agree. Like Suiji mentioned, what I was thinking is like eventually I'd want to hide it behind a well-named method.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's what we should do here. Is we should make a little method called, get configured response.
Right. Or configured response for URL.
Problem is that now, are we going to do that here too? I mean, .NET has the question operator now. I don't know if Java does.
No, Java, Kotlin does. Well, actually, I don't know if Kotlin has a double question mark. It certainly has a single question mark. And I'm not sure how it fits in with the optional stuff. But Java, nullable stuff, that's going to be a few years before we see that kind of syntax.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's sort of, if you're coming from a language where that concept was already there, then, or you're staying up in your syntax, then this is straightforward.
Yeah. Let's assume that we've got collective ownership, so people are pairing or ensembling.
Yeah.
Somebody looks at this and say, what is that?
Right.
And if the answer takes less than 3 seconds to give, that means it, defaults to undefined if it doesn't exist.
Yeah. I'm good with that.
Yeah. Okay. We're not quite done here. We do have one other test, right?
Yeah.
Allows multiple endpoints to be configured. Let me shut this down a little bit because our tests are getting long. I think we should just put that here. And just put in multiple endpoints here.
Okay.
You okay with that?
I'm good with that.
Okay. What do you want our second endpoint to be?
Sure. I was going to say, let's use the numbers for that. And for the body. And for my header.
Still work?
That should still work, right?
It did. And then
can't do the const. So that would fail if you ran it.
Should. Didn't because
we didn't change our assertion. That's why I like, especially when I'm doing a lot of copy and pasting, I like to see it fail again because sure that I copied.
But now we put 2 here, it should work.
Right. Oh, we missed the status.
Did. There we go.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, that's everything, I think.
All right, I'm going to delete that.
That passed.
Yep.
I don't know if you can hear the beeps or not.
I can. That's how.
Yeah, I got it. I've got my
Cranked up.
my volume turned up. Why don't you scroll through this, see if you can see any other opportunities to improve the test or the code?
I assume we'll deal with the type stuff.
Yeah, let's check this in, and then we'll deal with the types.
Yeah.
In fact, let me check in now,
Yeah.
and then we'll do the refactorings. So, what did we do?
What's the last commit we did?
Oh yeah, I think all we did was we improved the way it handled the defaults.
Yeah. It was mainly a refactoring.
For some reason, every time I run a command, it's waiting like 2-3 seconds before it starts running the command. That's kind of weird.
Because it thinks you're going too quickly. Slow down.
Let's see. HttpClient.create null handles defaults. It provides defaults for unconfigured. Response. That's not great, but that's the best I got.
Yeah. I think that's fine.
Fixed it. Whatever the problem was. To reopen the terminal. Hey, you joke, John, but that 3 seconds is noticeable. Drives me, yes, and it does drive me a little bit crazy. And I see Charlie earlier made a crack about me doing it the CTO way. I don't know what even that was referring to, but I'm watching you, Charlie.
We want to take our break and then fix up the type stuff?
Yeah, and also I think we want to look through the tests and the code and see if there's any options to improve it. But yeah, let's take our second break.
All right.
Okay. So yeah, you want to just scroll through these tests and see what you think.
Go too far.
Yeah. Oh, maybe I should scroll through them since the scrolling.
As long as I do it at a measured pace, it's fine.
Yeah. I think what bugs me about these tests, I mean, they're fine. But they do take up a lot of screen real estate, which makes them, I think, a little harder to understand.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, do we want to do a little bit of work of
like just condensing it down?
Yeah, like maybe. Oops.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that.
Yeah, like that.
I would agree with that. Hold on 1 second, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we don't need it there. We don't need it there. But here, I want to get rid of the extra comma. I know it's still legal, but it tweaks my brain.
I agree. Like, if it's on its own line, then it makes sense. But if it's going to be concatenated, then not so much.
And then here, I don't know if that's actually better. Probably not better, is it?
Yeah, it doesn't help all that much.
You see anything else as I'm going through this?
No, looks.
I think that's probably our biggest opportunity is just that. Except here, I think I do want to say, instead of application JSON, I hate using real world things. I'm say something like that, if this is okay with you. The reason I don't like using real world things is because there's a small chance of it being a false success.
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
Okay. And then the actual implementation, it's really just this stub globals. What are your thoughts here? I'm
not sure how to fix it, but it feels overly
a little bit big.
Yeah, like there's a lot going on. I don't have any
One thing that would
suggestions to
help
fix it.
is if we take the constants out. That should help. I like having the constants above or below the exports. Above. Let's rename this to be default nulled status. Default nulled. Default nulled headers. Null body. I feel like that helps a little bit.
I don't know that I feel like that helped all that much. Like, okay, it reduced it, but I'm not sure it actually made it more readable. And again, this is just one of those where there's a lot of little, there's this, and then there's this. I mean, I don't know if it's worth.
It's a little dense.
It's a little dense. I don't know if it's worth pulling this into a function, which is remove unconfigured content type.
Well, let me undo the moving of the constants because I'm agreed. It didn't add that much. I like cohesion.
Yeah, and I felt like it put it too far away. Yeah.
But I did combine that down into one line. I think this is a classic case where we know it's not perfect, but we don't see a better way. Let's let it go until the next time we look at it.
Well, I'm curious what you think about just one minor change, which is pulling out this if into delete unconfigured content type as a named function.
Let me just think about that. I'd like it in theory. I'm just looking for a way to do it better. Yeah, go ahead.
Will extract method work? Let's see. And we want it in this class. So
start it with a hash.
I'll
make it private. Oh, no, it's already private.
Okay. So
yeah, start with a hash. That's the new JavaScript way of doing private variables.
Or should I use delete? A little wordy, but accessibility modifier cannot be used. Oh, because it's already private, you can't say private?
I guess so. Great. This is one of the downsides of TypeScript is they are running a little bit ahead of the JavaScript spec to add features that people find useful, like accessibility. But then those things always end up getting into JavaScript eventually, and they're never quite the same. This is what killed CoffeeScript in the end.
Yes.
Is this better?
Like, I don't like that it's modifying a parameter.
Yeah, me neither.
And so I might turn it into sort of a true function but like, I don't know. I don't know a better way to implement it, but I feel like the name really helps make it understandable.
Yeah, I just like doing this properly would mean returning a new response. I just feel like we're getting to the point where the cure is worse than the disease. So I would like to undo. I think it's better off the way it was.
Okay.
I think that's good enough.
Yeah.
It's probably the last time we'll look at this in a very long time.
Yeah.
So and when we look at it again, we can say, what idiot wrote this code?
Say, what the heck does this mean? Why did they do that?
You can say, well, Jim wrote it, and I could say, well, Ted wrote it.
And I could say, well, Jim reverted my suggestion, so it's all his fault.
That's right. that's putting a lot of optimism in the reliability of our memories. It's like,
oh yeah,
I don't remember writing this code. Do you? Okay, so let's see. This has just been our cleanups to HttpClient tests and code. Okay.
Suiji is like, yes, we are taping it, but like we'd have to, unless the transcripts are searchable and we're that adamant about now finding out, the blame, then I think.
Well, it's the fifth unstated Agile Manifesto value, which I know is a true value because I see so many companies practicing it, which is that we value placing blame over getting shit done.
That's a well-established value, unfortunately.
It is. Must be true because I see so many companies who say they're agile following that value. That must be an agile value.
As long as it's not an XP value, then we're okay.
That's right.
So now do we TypeScriptify it?
I think now we TypeScriptify it.
You can tell I've been chomping at the bit, like types there.
Okay, so the responses are going to be optional.
Right.
And they will be the HTTP client responses, I think, is what we'll call these. I'm just putting that out there. Feel free to stop me at any moment. And the HTTP client response is going to be a record, which will be a string, and an HTTP client response. I don't love that it's only different by a plural, but
because that's our own type. That's not a response object. Okay.
That's going to be our type.
Right.
Maybe this should be nulled.
Client. I was going to say that. I was also wondering if.
John, that's awesome.
That's some detailed knowledge.
And you know why you're not allowed to do that, John? It's because it's corporal punishment.
Ouch. I'm
going to just keep going until you come up with a better name.
Yeah, it's interesting because map-like structures or dictionary-like structures, naming is always interesting. It's like, do you put the sort of what you're mapping to what sort of in the name?
Yeah, I mean, there's, I think, a lot of room for error when you've only got a single letter difference and one that's really not very visible.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the alternative feels so verbose to me that I'm not sure.
Well, I'm a Java guy, so I'm used to 80 character names. So
yeah. How about nulled HTTP client endpoints?
I mean, I would almost drop the HTTP client because we're inside of HTTP client.
You say that now, but this is exported.
Oh.
So we are going to be using it elsewhere.
Oh.
Yeah, it does actually need to be.
Then never mind.
But what we could do is say endpoints. Then
sure, that gets in at least the key part of the map.
The status is going to be a number. The headers are going to be a
record of string to string.
Of string to string. And the body is going to be a string. Okay, we're going to pass that through. The globals, this is a internal just fetch,
yeah.
Which is returns a promise type response, I think. Is that right? Fetch return. Oh, it takes a URL.
And URL is just a string, yeah.
And it also takes an optional something. Options.
That must be already defined, though.
It must be. Request init.
That doesn't look right.
I think it is.
But here it's called init. I mean, why init and not options?
Maybe because this was specified before the API was finalized.
Oh.
Let's try it, though. Actually, though, for our purposes, do we pass in anything to fetch? We do. We pass in method, headers, and body. I'm just going to define it this way.
Yeah. I don't think that's how you specify a return, though. Is it? Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it is.
Okay.
Oh, you're right. No, if I did it this way, the correct syntax would be like that.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
Okay. So here we've got this as being our globals.
Right. We need to type that globals.
Right.
Handy.
No errors here. No errors here. So this should be...
Those are our nulled
Yes. HTTP
endpoints.
We should rename this to be endpoints. Let's figure that out. It should be a string.
Configured oh, is it because this isn't typed?
Yeah. That did it.
Yep. Looks like there's one more error. F2 will jump you to it.
Mm-hmm.
So our oh, because it's question mark here.
Yeah, that should be question mark here. Now let's type check it. It's not quite working yet.
Oh, is that on our call site? Yeah, because
it looks like
a test.
So it looks like F2 doesn't go between files, huh? Okay.
Oh, because we didn't specify that those are optional in our nulled response?
I thought we did.
I thought we did too.
Oh, missed that one.
Ah.
There we go. That was actually fairly painless. And we didn't even have to import the types.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can check that in.
There was one thing I wanted to take a look at.
Sure.
So here we're calling it responses, but these are endpoints. Do we want to change that?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. I think that was the only thing I saw.
Suiji says, can you use the original fetch again? I didn't see when they put that comment. I'm not sure.
He mentioned that when we were trying to figure out what the return type was.
For fetch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
And so I guess it was that weird info thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. The reason, by the way, you probably know this, Ted, but for everybody watching, the reason I went with a narrower definition here rather than trying to get info to work is I've just not had great luck. Like when you get into the underlying APIs and you use the real types, you can go down a long rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Just narrowing the type down to what you actually care about
Right.
tends to make your life a lot easier.
Yeah.
And I'm fundamentally an impatient person. So it's like, let's just type in what we're actually using.
Yep.
Shall I check this in?
Yeah, go ahead and check that in.
Okay. Let me go ahead and reset this to no longer type check, since that adds a whole second to our build.
Oh,
Can't believe it.
terrible.
We have add types to HttpClient or fix HttpClient. I kind of want to integrate. It's been a long time since we've integrated.
Well, everything should be working, and everything that we wanted to do. Yeah.
Let's look at. Yes, apparently I can use the IDE's Git stuff. Just choose not to. Actually, no. Because it will make we probably should have integrated after our last time when we got the requests working, but let's finish getting this all the way in, and then we have a nice chunk of stuff to say we've integrated. Because what we need to do next is we need to bring this back in.
Right. Oh.
And that does not work. And then I'm going to hand this off to you to make pass. And I just realized we haven't been doing this the way that we're supposed to this whole time. So,
well, we've been mostly
just working in one or the other.
Working in one or the other for a while. So
yeah. But yeah, so we need to have this parse out the backend answer and return it.
So we actually need to hold on to the response. Oops.
No, that's actually going to be returning just the response. The response will have a status headers and body. So you could pull out the status headers and body if you wanted, or you could just pull out the response.
Say that again.
No curly braces.
Oh, okay. And so then on response, we just want the body, right? That's what we're saying we expect.
That that won't work. That will give us the JSON body, but I want to see it. I assume it will. Let's see if I'm right.
Yeah, I was going to say,
didn't work at all. And you know why it didn't? We have the wrong URL.
Yeah. Because we said that when we changed the configuration as the full thing.
But you see how nice it is. If we just returned an empty string or something, we'd be scratching our heads.
Right.
But seeing it come out default null HTTP response.
Right.
So this is, I program very defensively, and this is a good example of one of the ways I do that.
So now it should fail because we didn't parse the JSON.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Now we're in the right track.
Is it just .answer? I don't know how to.
Yeah. So what you're looking for here is.
Okay. And then that's just, well, it's just parse response, right? Then it's dot answer, or is it bracket answer?
Either is valid, but idiomatic would be dot answer.
Okay.
Okay, expected that to work. Oh, you know what? You went too far there. That is the other test failing. So what we need to do is factor this out into a valid response. And then here, this.
Right.
I'm going to check that in.
Yep.
BackEndClient dot say async parses backend response. Yep. And then I do want to do a little more cleanup here, if it's all right with you.
Yeah.
I want to factor out. This is something that I do a lot in JavaScript. I didn't used to do in other languages, but I started doing in JavaScript because refactoring was so painful.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of come to like it, partly because JavaScript does make it easier to do optional parameters than most languages.
Right.
But what I would do here is I would factor out a say async helper method.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then this would take the answer. Now derelevant to irrelevant answer. And the say, or message, I guess, of irrelevant message. I'm sort of thinking this out as I go.
Call instead of equals? Or... Oh, because it's parameters. Okay.
And then this piece. I could do this through a refactoring, but I'm sort of working it out as I go.
Are you going to pull the constant back into that method? Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the answer would be my answer.
And are you gonna return the response?
Yeah, I think so. I was just thinking about the API for this method. I probably should have extracted it rather than typing it from the beginning, because I'm not sure how this is going to work out when I actually try to plop it into place. But let's do this another way. I'm going to inline the response here.
Mm-hmm.
We want to do it for this one. We'll pull this out as our answer.
Right.
The rest of this is all going to be the same in every case.
Right.
It's going to be the same. Yeah. So now I'm going to pull this out into a method.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is exactly the encapsulate setup refactoring maneuver that I talk about, that you do a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you can inline that.
Work.
Now you can inline that answer one.
Yeah, I could, but I'm not sure if that's the approach I want. So I think I'm going to call this not answer, but expected answer.
Yeah.
We'll for configured answer?
Configured answer, because it's not the expected. The expected is in the assert.
Right.
But it is the configured one, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to rename this to be configured answer.
Mm-hmm.
Answer. Try taking that off. And then, boom, I'm going to make it parameterized.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is still the answer, but I'm going to make that parameterized.
So help me out here. What's the benefit of doing that? Of putting the curly braces?
We're probably going to want to return multiple answers
okay.
here.
All right.
Multiple things. That's why. Okay, so this one's done, right? Now I can inline it.
Right.
Did we go too far on that? Is this hard to understand now?
I mean, I like it other than the fact that the method, our test async, say async, doesn't make it clear that it's our sort of test helper method from the name. But other than that, I like it.
Yeah. This is a pattern I've always followed, so it's super clear to me, but I wouldn't say it's universal. But if it was pretty obvious when you're calling the real thing versus when you're not, like that.
Oh, okay.
The real thing,
that's fair.
That would, that's not.
Yeah. And that's, and then that's again, also sort of like code coloring and even, and that kind of stuff is not what I'm used to because we're working in a different language. So
yeah.
So I'll take that on faith.
This track request, this is where we need the
that's where we need the additional configured return. Yeah.
So return the HTTP requests here.
So much easier than Java.
It's so much easier. Like it's I don't know if this is even a good pattern in Java. We tried using it a couple of times, but it was painful every single time.
Well, with the new refactoring, when we did it to a record, that actually
was definitely better.
Yeah, and actually the current versions of IntelliJ do that for you. And so
they're smarter.
Yeah, so actually that's the pattern I now use, and it's
cool.
It's actually what I talked about in my talk, and now I push because I think because there were a lot of times where it was kind of painful to return multiple values that were varying across different tests. And the record, I think, is more than good enough in the Java case.
Yeah. So I'm replacing this code with the say async.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care what the client is configured with in this case.
Right.
We're getting the request tracked, calling it.
Right.
We do care what we're calling it with.
Yes.
So the message is going to be my message. I don't know if we're actually supporting that. We're not. So here we're going to have to say message equals irrelevant message. And down here, same message.
Right. Yeah, Sweetie, any day optional arguments. I don't know where that is in their priorities. I think there's all this stuff that's under this Valhalla umbrella that brings some really awesome stuff, but I think it's going to be a little while.
Optional arguments are such a game changer. Like optional named arguments are awesome.
Yeah.
C# has them, but they're not as good as what we can do with this sort of object pattern here. Because you can't give them arbitrary initializers. The initializers are very constrained in how you can, what code you can write. Whereas in this approach, we could call a function. We could do whatever we wanted in here. And
it'll
you
be
definitely
interesting.
Run up against that in C#.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because one of the things the Java architects say is like, C# implements this stuff, but they're sort of not as thoughtful.
They're not great. They work, but
and they throw
great.
stuff in, and sometimes it's like, oh, that wasn't great, but it's too late. And so the Java architects are definitely taking the slow but steady with all the previews that they do and so on. So
I think that's sort of an established best practice. Like JavaScript, of course, is famous for having some really rough edges.
Yeah.
But the community-driven process they have now, where they really look at what are people using in the field, like
Right.
what libraries are they using,
Yeah.
what cross compilers are they using,
Right.
because it's such a huge ecosystem.
Yeah.
There's always lots of examples to pull from and say,
Yeah.
oh, well, what about this case? What about this case?
Yeah.
And it really does work out at the cost of it takes a long time for stuff like types to get into the language.
Yeah. Yeah, and the same thing with Java. It's like it takes a long time for stuff that's like, oh, why can't you just? It's like, yes, we could just. Like the interpolated strings or string templates that are landing in the next version of Java. Some people dislike the syntax. I'm fine with it. But it's like, oh, you could. They basically said, look, we could have done this earlier, but it would have meant all this other things would not have been as nice. And so I think, given how old Java is and how long it will continue to exist and be active, I think that's appropriate. And that goes back to sort of the ecosystem and culture around even the language change is different from language to language.
Exactly, yeah. I think we've finished our backend client.
Well, that's much more concise.
Yeah, isn't it prettier? I like that tons better.
Yeah.
Like, we say something, we check that we made a request. We make a request, we check that we got the thing we've got. I'm still not entirely sure about this because this really obscures, well, what is it that we're sending? So I'm not sure that this is great because we are talking about the actual API implementation. We care fairly deeply about what we're sending. So we might revisit this. If this was our real backend API, as opposed to a placeholder for getting the walking skeleton, of course, we care about error checking and what if we get the wrong status code and all this stuff. But I think since this is really just for our walking skeleton and it's not the way it's going to be long term, I think we can call this story done.
I agree.
Story done, but this task done.
This task, yeah, I agree because I mean, when we need that, we'll modify it and add it and make it more complicated as it needs to be.
I think we finished making the HTTP client nullable and testable.
Yes, we did. Yes.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say that we've update README or update task. And let me go ahead and put in here that this is
yep.
And I'm going to integrate.
All right.
So we have implemented the backend client abstraction.
Excellent.
That will pass. Well, looks like it worked. Done.
Awesome.
Okay. I think next time we'll be working on the back end.
Yeah, looks that way.
To Java.
Yeah. And
cool.
I might submit a tiny pull request, or we'll figure out how to do that, just to upgrade the Spring to the latest.
Yeah, if you could do that on the dev branch.
On the dev branch, okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to be working in the code.
Yep.
If I do, I'll text you or something.
Yeah.
But if you could do that in the dev branch, and then integrate when it's working.
Okay.
Then I'll pull before our next time, and we'll work out of the dev branch from there.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I'd rather you didn't check in directly to the integration.
Yeah, no, I wasn't planning on certainly on doing directly to the integration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's. I think that's it. Thoughts on what we did today? We did mostly the HttpClient configurable responses, but we also did the backend parsing the backend response.
Right. And what was nice is basically we wrote a test for that. We saw it fail. Said, okay, that's kind of the current top level thing that's encompassing what we're doing. And then we did all the work to make configurable. And then we basically sort of popped the stack and said, and this is, again, very much how I'll also think about just doing coding that's outside in. What does the outside thing need to look like? Okay, write a test. If you can write a test that's failing, that's great. And then we had a failing test. And then it's like, okay, put it aside. And then work on all the internal stuff, because now we know how it's going to work. And then all that we think we're done, and then pull it out, and then voila, then writing that basically making that quote acceptance like or outer test work was really straightforward.
So one of the downsides of doing the nullables, which is really more a downside of doing sociable tests in general as opposed to isolated tests. If we were doing isolated tests, if we were doing mocks or stubs or something like that, we could have written this test here, this parse responses test, and had it passing. Like we could have implemented this code and this backend client without implementing the HTTP client,
right,
and had it pass.
Right.
But as it is, we had to do this sort of clunky thing where we wrote the test. We were doing sort of an outside in style.
Yep.
We wrote the test, and then we commented it out,
right,
and checked that in.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on the trade-offs there?
So, I mean, the downside is, what if you forget to uncomment it and you move on and you're like, what the heck happened?
Or we could have marked it as skip instead of, but then which ones are skipped for real and which ones are not?
Yeah, I mean, skipped or disabled or whatever the type thing always concerned me, because I like as much as possible to keep stuff clean. And I wish there was sort of another, and hey, you just wrote a framework, right? So you could do this, like pending. And it runs, but it's okay for it to fail. But it's called out separately, sort of in the output, and then won't allow you to have, for example, more than one pending thing.
Right.
So, because it's not really like, yes, we're skipping it, but it's sort of, but I don't want to see red, but I also don't want to forget about it. Anyway, so that's sort of a potential downside. In reality, I don't know how often that happens.
I think it's a real thing. Like, I'm okay with having skip tests while I'm working.
Yeah.
But I have thought that I want to modify my integration script so that if it sees any skipped tests, the integration fails.
Yeah.
Because the skip is actually exactly what you're talking about. For me, that's pending. It's not something you leave skipped forever.
Right.
It's something that you're turned off just for now because you're in the middle of something else.
Right.
And it's better than commenting out because you can see the skip showing up.
Yes.
Like at one point you're like, hey, how come we have a skip test? And I was like, oh, well, that's just the test we haven't implemented yet.
Right.
But
and the other thing is, so there's similar sort of markings that I do. So for example, when I'm doing large scale refactorings, for example, one of the steps I do in my extract class is I create a getter, because that's how I start the process of pulling code over to solve primitive obsession. But I immediately deprecate it. So that way it's like, yes, it's here, but really the idea is it should not be integrated. Like it's scaffolding. And so I always use this term scaffolding a lot. Is like, this is, while we're building it, we need this structure to help us build it, to help us keep us safe. But eventually we have to tear it down because it's not something that we actually want to keep around. Right.
Yeah. Suiji has a question in the chat saying, we're talking about my somewhat famous article, Continuous Integration on the $1 a Day. For those of you who've seen it but don't remember, that's the one with the rubber chicken. And I think the reason this article is somewhat famous is not because it's a great article, but because it has a rubber chicken in it. And rubber chickens make everything better.
Oh, absolutely.
But actually that picture of the rubber chicken in that article, let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah. So this rubber chicken, this is the actual continuous integration token that my team really did use for about 2 years.
Right.
And yes, that is a USB port coming out of its butt because we thought it was funny. It's not plugged into anything. It's just an adapter that fit perfectly.
Nice.
More information than you really need to know, but now you
No,
know.
that was about the level of information I needed to know. That was important.
Right. Okay, good. So the question is, do I still use the rubber chicken? And the answer is no, I don't use the rubber chicken, because the rubber chicken was for subversion. And earlier on, just gives you an idea of how old this was, CVS, which is concurrent version system. Yes, CVS was a delightful version control system. So delightful, in fact, that as soon as subversion was popular, I moved and never looked back.
Yep.
Because CVS, of course, versioned each file independently.
Yes.
And there was no way to say, get me back to this version of the whole system.
Of all the set of files, yes.
Yeah. So subversion was a massive step forward. But subversion didn't really do branching and merging well.
No.
And that's what Git does really well.
Yeah.
And so with Git, I have an algorithm in my book. Might be surprised to hear this, in the continuous integration practice.
No.
There is, I know. Shocking, huh?
I'm shocked.
Yeah, you should be. I have an algorithm for how can you do the same sort of guaranteed never to break integration that the rubber chicken gets you without using a rubber chicken. And the way you do it is I hate it when people say the way you do it is you use multiple branches, and you still have one integration machine, and that sort of acts as your synchronization.
As your synchronization token. Yep.
Right. Whereas with subversion, if you were committing to that machine, you had to make sure nobody else did anything with it while you did.
Right.
But with Git, you can commit to just your private branch, go over to the integration machine, and do basically an atomic merge that will fail if anybody else has committed in the meantime. And that atomic merge is called FF only, fast forward only.
Right.
And it will only work if there is nothing else.
Yeah, there's nothing else in the way. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, there's an algorithm for it. It's like 10 lines of shell code. It's actually pretty easy. And I'm disappointed that all these build systems don't default to builds that cannot possibly break.
Yeah. Can you still use a rubber chicken? You can totally still use a rubber chicken. You could use a virtual rubber chicken. But
yeah, that's not as much fun.
It's not as much fun, no.
I had 2 of these at one point, and my brother was taking karate, so he demonstrated us how the rubber chickens could be rubber chicken nunchucks.
Just the image of that is hilarious.
Yeah. Rubber chickens make everything better.
Yes, absolutely.
Is the moral of the story.
Yes.
I think that's a great place for us to stop. I think if we don't stop here, bad things could happen.
Yep.
So thank you for watching, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everybody, for hanging out with us, and especially all the help and comments in chat. We really appreciate it. Tell your friends, tell your colleagues, even tell your enemies. Have them tune in next time. And that's all for today. See you next time.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.